Growing up, I was told I had a maternal aunt, but that she was too selfish to have time for her family, and that was why I never met her. My parents would badmouth her every opportunity they got, but I never really got an answer about what happened. I was at a family function 2 years ago on my own, while my parents were out of the country. My parents will not attend events my aunt will be at, and being that she is child-free, my family was always given preference because of me. When I got to meet her, I was really struck by her. I knew I looked like her, but our personalities are similar. We immediately got along and we exchanged numbers. I didn't tell my parents I was talking to her because it wasn't their business and I'm an adult. As we got closer, I found out she was married before her current husband and he passed away after a hard fight with cancer. She's been helping me with my career path after graduate school, has great connections that have been absolutely amazing. My aunt wouldn't tell me what happened. She told me that it was between her and my parents, and that it didn't involve me. One night, I went over to dinner, and we were talking about my education. When I said my dad's parents paid for my college, she seemed surprised, but said nothing. Dinner wasn't awkward and nothing seemed to be wrong. My aunt said she was tired after dinner and asked her husband to drive me home. I had a few glasses of wine. On the car ride, he told me that I was an adult and deserved to know the truth about what happened. And this is a first-hand account because he was there. He was my aunt's husband's best friend and best man. And before anyone comments, they both say her husband told them that it would happen after he passed, and they had his blessing. My parents disowned my aunt because she had a child-free wedding and wouldn't make an exception for me, but literally offered to pay for on-site childcare. But because I couldn't be there, they refused and belittled my aunt. They cut her off entirely, and I can honestly see them being this petty. They had a hard time having me. This is where it gets even worse. My maternal grandparents have been gone 10 years. They both died in an accident. When her husband was dying of cancer, my aunt reached out to my mom, only for my mom to ask her, "Well, he was the only family you needed at your wedding, wasn't he?" And hung up on her. The biggest thing, she sent my parents the money to pay for my college and grad school, and they didn't tell me. When he dropped me off, I immediately called them, and they admitted that it was true, but defended their position, saying that I should have been invited. I told them both they were horrible people to leave her alone for so long and never to contact me again. They have been blowing up my phone and showing up uninvited to my house. They are now harassing my aunt, who is almost inconsolable. I texted them to tell them it wasn't endearing their position to me, but they didn't stop until she blocked them both. I don't know what else to do now. Did I overreact? My aunt is crushed. Wow, your parents are a piece of work. They disown her over a petty thing like child-free wedding, and yet accept her money for your college education. They have a lot of apologizing to do. You did not overreact. If you haven't already, contact your aunt and tell her she has nothing to be sorry about, and that you want to keep your relationship with her, and properly thank her for your education. For your parents, tell them very clearly, until I get a full apology from you lying about my education, we won't be speaking anytime soon. Update. It didn't get any better, unfortunately. I cut all contact with my parents, and after they showed up to my place, demanding that I speak to them, and they refused to apologize for what they did. They said she turned her back on family, and I asked them how, by not wanting a toddler that would be bored out of her mind at a wedding ceremony? They looked like I'd slapped them, and I kept repeating that I'd have been bored as dot. I've seen some videos. It was a typical wedding, as lovely as it was, and it was literally only a few hours. They couldn't bear to part with me for a few hours? I said the only people I saw abandoning family here was them, especially when she called them as her husband was dying of terminal cancer, and they shunned her at her lowest. I said even after that, she still sent money for my college, and they couldn't even be decent people and be honest about that either. I told them I wanted nothing to do with him, and that they could consider themselves a childless couple, while she gained what would be the equivalent of an adult daughter, and then slammed the door in their faces. I eventually had to threaten them with the police when they wouldn't leave. I spent Thanksgiving with my aunt and her friends, who she has said are her family. They've been friends since high school and are just as warm as my aunt. Today she called me. My aunt has owned her small business for the past 15 years, and it is doing well. She told me that the person who is in the position in my field is retiring next year, and she would like me to consider the position. She said it is merit based on my work. She stressed there is no expectations, but if I come aboard, it'd be unfair of her to say that she'd want me to eventually take over the company, instead of selling it like she planned in the future. I accepted and will be starting my new position in the new year, so I can learn the accounts from the person in the position. My husband, 25 male, and I, 24 female, have been married about a year and a half. While we were in the early stage of dating, he moved into his parents' house to support them financially. Rent, internet, phone bill, most everything. They grew up very poor and moved around a lot with 8 kids in the family, and his dad always struggled to find and keep jobs. When my husband first moved back in, his plan was for his dad to find a job within a couple months and start making enough money to get off their feet. They had 2 other kids still living in the house at the time, and a third who came back to stay with them after college. About 6 months of his dad still not finding a single job, I asked how it was going. He said his dad was applying for jobs here and there, but that his pride was standing in the way of applying for just any job. My husband even got his dad a job at his place of work, and he quit after a few weeks because it was too stressful. Prior to and during our engagement, we had multiple talks about his family's money situation, and we came to an understanding and an agreement that he would not be so quick to jump in and help, and that if anything serious came up, we'd talk about it. He also recognized how he had been taken advantage of by his parents for so long. Fast forward into marriage. His dad had a serious medical event and went into emergency surgery. It was rough, but he is doing good now. We had another talk because I knew they would be facing some medical bills. I told him I still had concerns he put his family above our family, me and him. He thanked me for sharing those feelings and reassured me that I would not be left out of the loop on anything. I felt really good about it. Well, as predicted, one of the first things his mom does during and after surgery is reach out to her children, who have families of their own, mind you, and ask if they can help with bills for the next few months. I had a gut feeling one night and went through my husband's phone. I know this is a controversial topic of its own. I found out that the other siblings had a group chat where they discussed all pitching in around $800 a month for who knows how long. My husband had also sent over a large sum of money from a separate bank account to his parents. Had I not gone through his phone, I never would have known. I told him to get rid of his separate bank account and that he is not to be providing financially for his family anymore, period. He agreed. We get into another argument a month down the line because he still had not gotten rid of the separate bank account. He was going to do it when it was convenient for him. Now, just this past week, I found out he spent about $200 on baseball game tickets for his mom, dad, and little brother. It was his dad's birthday, so I get wanting to treat dad. I was not informed that, yet again, he was paying everyone's way so that everyone could have a good time. He later said that his mom told him she would pay for his food at the game and apologized for not giving me all the details. He also got defensive, saying that I never try to truly understand why he does things and that I don't understand him. So I asked him why he doesn't try to explain why he does things up front to me and why he is so secretive. The root of my annoyance comes from growing up in a family where my parents worked hard to get where they are now, and teaching me the same. My husband is a very hard worker and extremely good at what he does. But his parents don't get it, and I feel protective. Am I being too micromanaging? Am I overreacting? Can anyone else relate on either end of the spectrum? You have different ideas about how families should be supported, and whether some finances should be separate. That's a big deal. I don't honestly think he's terribly unreasonable to want to help. If you two can afford it, or if he can afford it out of his own spending money that you've both agreed on. But apparently he's not good at advocating for himself, versus just telling you what you want to hear to avoid a confrontation. I think that's your real issue here, not the family help. His inability to be honest and upfront with you about what he actually wants to do. If he were doing that, you two could work through this and come to some sort of compromise. Most likely, some sort of upper limit on how much he can give to family, versus a complete ban on family support. I think you should work on your communication skills as a couple, probably in couples therapy, and then come back to the issue. Or, sure, get a divorce if you don't want to deal with the long and difficult process that will probably be. I would suggest couples counseling. You seem to have a value that parents should not be a drain on their children, and that the immediate family or married partner and future kids should be top priority. He seems to think that children should support their family if they manage to be successful financially, even if others did not succeed. Neither of you are necessarily wrong, but your values are in conflict. I'm sensing that you feel his giving large sums of money to his family is a threat to your shared financial well-being, and that it's wrong of him to do it. But it also seems he really values supporting his family, and may not feel comfortable voicing to you that it's important to him. And so he tells you he'll stop, but continues in secret. You need to talk in counseling, and try to understand what you both value, and why you are acting the way you are. He can't keep hiding feelings from you, but if you really value supporting family, then it may not be fair for you to make him stop completely. If you can understand each other, and reach a compromise that works for you, then great. Otherwise, divorce may be a good choice. I, 28 female, have a best friend, 28 female. Let's call her Dana. who used to date this guy, 30 male. Let's call him Mark. They only started dating a little over 2 years ago, but I always considered them as relationship goals. Always acting so sweet around each other, with Mark being such a caring and funny guy. I always thought Dana was very lucky to have him as her boyfriend. Yesterday, however, I got a phone call from a crying Dana, telling me that she and Mark broke up after she found out he had cheated on her. I immediately rushed to her place in order to comfort her, still quite in disbelief that someone like Mark could do such a thing. When she finally calmed down, she told me that Mark confessed to having a one-night stand with one of his co-workers, and he was too guilty to hide it from her. He tried reasoning with her, but she was having none of it, and ended the relationship right there. She then started talking about how that a-hole tried to guilt-trip her into staying with him by telling her that he only cheated because she was working all the time and felt emotionally neglected by her. And now, here's where I could be the a-hole. I intervened and told her that maybe Mark has a point. She tends to be a little workaholic. She then glared at me and asked if I'm seriously taking his side. I said, I'm not taking any sides. I'm just saying that maybe she's indeed partly to blame for the relationship problems that resulted in Mark. Plus, it was just a one-night stand, and Mark felt guilty for it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have confessed. She then asked me if I think she should take him back, and I told her that everyone makes mistakes, and she shouldn't let just one moment of weakness destroy her entire relationship. She then told me that I'm unbelievable, and told me to get out of her house. I was a bit taken aback by this, but I didn't want to cause any more drama, so I just left. I was waiting till today for her to calm down a bit before we talked again. But now I found out that I've been blocked by her everywhere. She was my best friend since high school, so of course I was very hurt to find out that she cut me off over an argument. While I don't condone what Mark did, I still think Dana is partly to blame for this mess. And now it seems like she's taking it out on everyone else who doesn't agree with her, which I'm afraid might end up leaving her very lonely. Am I the a-hole? Yes, the a-hole. There's never a ducking excuse for cheating, ever. If you're dissatisfied in a relationship, you either work it out or break up. It's not her fault she cheated. What the duck? Yes, the a-hole. He was deceitful. This concludes the narrative. There are no justifications. He should have confided in her if he was lonely and neglected. Instead, he shattered her heart and enlisted your assistance in trampling on it. And if you think your friend works too hard, save it for another time. She literally just found out he cheated. Your personal reflections aren't helpful at all. I think OP has idolized this guy because she saw the relationship as something she wanted for herself and doesn't want to let go of the concept she had of Mark before he turned out to be so depressingly human. My husband, 29 male. Me, 26 female. I'll keep this short. My husband got into an accident a few weeks ago while on his way home from work and was rushed to the hospital. My mother-in-law called me and told me he was almost dying, and I freaked out. When I got there, the doctors told me he kept asking for his ex, and that they had to sedate him because he wouldn't stop freaking out because she wasn't there. I thought it was okay since the car crash was so bad, but the doctors told me it wasn't. He fractured his legs and there was a minor fracture in his arm. And he wasn't on any drugs either. He was saved from serious injuries, especially brain. I let it go at that moment because his health came first. But now that he's home and recovering, I can't help but be bothered by it. I brought it up last night, 3 weeks after the accident, and he went off on me, saying I don't know what it feels like to be in that position, and that I made his misery about myself. He said I don't understand the dynamic between them and what they had. So I should stop bringing it up and that this wasn't about me, and that he was allowed to ask for her since he was hurt, and she would calm him down. Then texted his mother, who berated me over it. She said my main priority should be caring for him till he's back on his feet. A part of me wants to be petty and leave and tell him to call his ex-wife and ask her to take care of him instead. What should I make of this situation? I've been taking care of him and catering to all his needs, and I haven't even gotten a single thank you. Am I an a-hole for bringing it up? Not the a-hole. His response clearly shows he's trying to victimize himself, and made no attempt to even say it wasn't intentional, showing no regard for OP's feelings while trying to make her believe she had no right to even think or question this situation. OP could have had no insecurity and just been curious, found it funny, but he point-blank got defensive and turned it around on her just for asking. OP, leave. He does not value you as a partner or lover. He's aptly demonstrated that his only interest is in his ex, and you're just a convenient maid. Personally, I wouldn't even let it get to therapy. I'd just leave him at that point. I don't know if y'all will consider therapy, but I do hope you put yourself higher up on your list of priorities. You have a big heart. Don't let an a-hole waste it. Not the a-hole.